Because you can see, like, one of the things that Tom described, which you just described, is that they were not only messing with LSD, but they were also testing amphetamines with this place that was funded by that cutout that was CIA money. And the Manson murders are one of the most violent murders that's ever happened in this country, in the history of this country, on American soil. So, like, the fact that, like, there's a clear tie that I think Tom O'Neill points out in his book with all the people that Manson was connected with, bringing the girls there all the time, all the other shady things. So, like, what is your understanding, or what is your opinion on what was happening with Charles Manson?
Yeah. Well, there are demonstrable studies that were being done involving Manson. So this is true. I mean, he was at the very least in observational studies, his family. These are so, I was actually just talking with Tom O'Neill last week about this, because we're both interested in, I mean, I don't think it's determined yet that West, you can't put Jolly West in a room with Charles Manson, at least not in a documented way. But it is true that West had an office at the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic from the very beginning, and he was part of the crowd of people who were running the both the Haight-Ashbury Research Project, and his own observational study, which was really like a naturalistic study of these communes, of the different families, of how their psychodynamics and social dynamics worked. And so West and some of his colleagues were actually going into the field with the Manson family and others.
Really?
In Mendocino, yeah. And one of them was Alan Rose. And so there are people such as a graduate student and assistant at the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic named Gary Landis, so they are personally links between West and people like Alan Rose. And they were definitely treating the Manson and his family at the clinic. So you can bring them so close, but you don't really know. It's hard to tell exactly, if you want to trace West's role. What I do see is that people for many years were saying that the hippies turned from LSD to speed later, and that this caused, like, the Haight to become a violent and unpleasant place after the Flower Child period. And so the Amphetamine Research Project was tracking and interviewing these young, runaways and stuff, starting in 68. I think it was, 68. So one of the people working for West, Gary Landis, talks about how he went into the medical clinic and he observed them interviewing kids who were amphetamine addicts. Like, they were tracking them over time. So West used to say something like, or people used to say, Manson was unusual in that he was a speed addict first, and then he got into LSD, and then he stopped because he didn't really like needles. But his family definitely, this was the lore, why maybe amphetamines didn't have anything to do with the murders or whatever. This is what people used to say. But actually, it does seem that he and his family were increasingly turning to speed at the same time, or amphetamines and speed.
Injecting it?
Well, maybe not injecting it because he didn't like needles.
Gotcha.
But, they could be orally taking it, or
right.
It's not, this is just something that has come up in various interviews. But there was a curiosity about triggering violence and the potential connection between LSD and violence, and certainly Manson, obviously used LSD in his relationships. I mean, this is,
right.
His people like his Susan Atkins and others talked about how they would try never to come down, like they were vying to see who could never come down from one day to another. So they were very addled, and then if you add other substances. So it's interesting. I mean, there are parallels in the NIMH funded research. So you don't see the name CIA. You don't see any of these earlier cutouts.
What is NIMH?
The National Institute of Mental Health.
Okay.
They were funding a couple of these projects.
Right.
Because they were just interested. They were interested, and they wanted, on one level, they had an interest in curing addiction. There seemed to be a mass epidemic of amphetamine addiction.
Yeah, it's, I always wonder whether or not with the stuff that they were testing on Charles Manson and the family, like, were they trying to aim for a specific result, or were they just throwing shit at the wall to basically see what would happen? Or were they trying to guide them in any specific way, you know?
I'm not sure they were even testing on them. I mean, I don't think that's been proven. I think they were naturalistically observing them. And
they were just observing them as like wild animals.
And also, well, the problem is with naturalistic observation is people, you know, throughout time they get involved with their subjects. And West himself in his own diary wrote, "I'm getting too close to my subjects." You know, these were he was involved in many different things.
Right.
And his other of his team also became involved. Like they not only went to, you know, sort of anthropologically observe the family, but they were sleeping with them sometimes, the women, or they sort of get involved. But I'm not sure I don't believe that there were formal, you know, at least nothing in the record, nothing that they would have published or nothing that NIMH would have sponsored, which would have allowed the actually giving or, you know, testing or experimenting with Manson or anything like that.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest questions about that, though, is like, why did he kept getting let out of prison by Roger Smith, you know?
Well, this is such a good, I mean, it's true. It's remarkable. So you can say it is possible. So that there could be clandestine papers, studies, who knows? But Roger Smith it's really odd that he was both, you know, a prominent researcher in amphetamine addiction. He was doing these experiments with mice and with complicated protocols. He was also friends with David A. Smith, who ran the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic, and he was Manson's parole officer. Like, that's very hard to understand, and he kept releasing him. But he says that, I think he said at one point, there was a program to try releasing parolees to see if they would do better. So, I mean, it doesn't really, like a criminological experiment of some kind. It's not easily explained. I think that's why Tom O'Neill's book is very striking. I mean,
he didn't commit any like real violent crimes though, did he? Before that, weren't they just like petty theft and like stealing a car and some other things that wouldn't lock him up forever? Or did he actually like?
Well, he and his family did kill a Buddhist practitioner in a drug deal, some sort of right before the murders.
Oh yes.
You know, but before that, Manson actually his family was known. Some people say, at least Alan Rose at one point said, actually they're kind of like model hippies. At least he takes care of them. He brings them to the doctor. They're not just, you know, in squalor, but because he was pimping out the women in the family too. But so, and he had career ambitions, Manson. So
right, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think he didn't have
Boys.
He didn't have actually much history of violence that I know of. Like he of course he didn't commit these murders himself. His family did.
Right.
Like and subscribe.